5 minutes ago, the Duke of Kent broke his silence and exposed a stunning truth about Camilla's shameful ancestry. His revelations delve into a scandalous family history, one marked by extramarital affairs that eerily mirror her infamous relationship with King Charles. This exposé has raised uncomfortable questions about whether such behavior is a pattern rooted in her lineage. The Duke's bold remarks have turned the spotlight back onto Camilla and forced the public to confront a legacy of infidelity that has tarnished both her past and the monarchy's future. Alice Keppel, Camilla's scandalous great-grandmother, was more than just a figure of intrigue in Edwardian society. She was the long-term mistress of King Edward VII, a relationship that scandalized the monarchy while solidifying her family's social and financial standing for generations. Alice's story began in the late 19th century, a time when Edwardian society operated under strict class structures but allowed room for women of cunning and charm to ascend its ranks. Alice was a young woman from a respectable but financially struggling family. She married George Keppel, a soldier whose earnings were modest at best. Their marriage, however, was far from conventional. When Alice began her affair with the then Prince of Wales, later Edward VII, it was not only tolerated by her husband but actively encouraged. George reportedly understood the social advantages Alice's position as the king's mistress brought to their family. Alice's relationship with Edward VII was far from fleeting. Edward, known for his appetite for luxury and indulgence, found in Alice a confidant who was not only beautiful but also astute and diplomatic. She knew how to manage the king's volatile temper. This made her an indispensable part of his private life. Over the years, Alice became a fixture at royal gatherings, often more visible than the Queen herself, and her influence extended well beyond the confines of the king's bedroom. Financially, Alice's affair with Edward VII transformed her family's fortunes. Lavish gifts and monetary support flowed regularly, enabling the Keppels to live in high style. They frequented the best parties, wore the finest clothes, and mingled with the most influential figures of the time. Alice's daughters received privileged educations and were introduced to elite social circles, even securing advantageous marriages. This newfound wealth and status laid the groundwork for the family's continued prominence, culminating in Camilla's eventual rise as queen consort. Socially, Alice was a master at navigating scandal. Despite her role as Edward VII's mistress, she was rarely ostracized. In fact, many in society admired her for her discretion and her ability to keep the king happy without causing overt embarrassment to the royal family. Her charm and wit allowed her to remain in high esteem even after Edward died in 1910. By then, Alice had firmly cemented her legacy and ensured that the Keppel name would be synonymous with influence and power for decades to come. The Duke of Kent's revelations about Alice Keppel have forced a re-examination of her legacy, particularly in the context of her great-granddaughter Camilla. The parallels between the two women are striking. Both gained prominence through their relationships with future kings. Both were initially seen as scandalous outsiders who disrupted royal marriages, Alice with Edward VII and Camilla with King Charles during his marriage to Princess Diana, and both have been accused of leveraging their positions for personal and familial gain. This comparison has led many to question whether such behavior is indeed hereditary, as the Duke of Kent suggested. Alice's rise through scandal and Camilla's controversial role in Charles's life suggest a recurring pattern that has followed the Keppel lineage. The notion of infidelity and opportunism as part of Camilla's family history casts her actions in a new light, suggesting that her behavior might be less of an anomaly and more of a hereditary inclination. Alice's story also raises broader questions about the monarchy's complicity in allowing such relationships to flourish. Edward VII's open affair with Alice was tolerated, if not tacitly accepted, by the royal family and the public. Similarly, Charles's relationship with Camilla endured years of controversy before ultimately being legitimized through marriage. This enduring dynamic suggests a cyclical pattern of royal indiscretion that continues to define the monarchy's modern image. The Duke of Kent's decision to expose these connections has left royal observers and historians grappling with the implications of Camilla's ancestry. Is her controversial role in Charles's life the product of personal choices, or is it part of a legacy she could not escape? The answer may lie in examining how these patterns have persisted within the royal institution, linking past scandals to present controversies. The Duke of Kent breaks silence. The Duke of Kent's candid remarks about Camilla's shameful ancestry confirm the long-standing whispers about her lineage. His statement, made during a private yet leaked conversation, exposed what he described as a hereditary pattern of scandal that has repeatedly tainted the royal family and many in its orbit. The Duke's remark centered on Alice Keppel. He described her as a woman whose influence extended far beyond the confines of her personal relationship with the king. According to the Duke, Alice's manipulation of her position to secure wealth and status for her family set a precedent that echoes through Camilla's own controversial life. History seems to have repeated itself, the Duke is reported to have said. Alice Keppel brought scandal to the Edwardian court, and her great-granddaughter has done the same in the modern era. The parallels are undeniable, almost hereditary, he confirmed. He pointed to how Alice Keppel's relationship with Edward VII enabled her descendants to climb the social ladder, ultimately positioning Camilla to enter the royal sphere. The implication that Camilla's actions might be influenced by a hereditary predisposition for scandal reignited debates about the monarchy's ability to adapt to modern values. The revelations came at a particularly sensitive time for the royal family. The Duke's decision to speak out has dredged up painful memories of Charles's affair with Camilla and cast a shadow over her current role as Queen Consort. Insiders suggest that senior royals are scrambling to address the fallout, and the public response has been anything but forgiving. Critics of the monarchy have seized on the Duke's comments as evidence of an institution steeped in outdated tradition and repeated scandals. Supporters of the royal family, meanwhile, have struggled to defend Camilla against accusations that her behavior is part of a pattern established by her ancestor. The next chapter of this story explores how these scandals have shaped public perceptions of the monarchy and how Camilla and Charles fit into this enduring narrative of infidelity and controversy. Royal affairs through the ages. The British monarchy has long been synonymous with grandeur and tradition, but its history is also riddled with scandal, particularly when it comes to affairs of the heart. From King Edward VII's indiscretions to King Charles's well-publicized affair with Camilla, these episodes have shaped public perceptions of the monarchy and reinforced a pattern of behavior. King Edward VII, known as Bertie before his ascension, set the precedent for royal affairs in the modern era. His numerous mistresses, including Alice Keppel, were as much a part of his legacy as his political and diplomatic achievements. Alice, in particular, became his favorite companion during the last decade of his life. She wielded significant influence over him and, by extension, the royal court. Edward's openly indulgent lifestyle, marked by extramarital liaisons, tarnished the moral authority of the monarchy but also normalized the idea that royals were not bound by the same rules as the public. The echoes of Edward VII's lifestyle can be seen in King Charles's tumultuous personal life. Charles's affair with Camilla during his marriage to Princess Diana became one of the most infamous royal scandals of the 20th century. The revelation that the heir to the throne had maintained a long-standing relationship with Camilla while married to Diana, a global icon in her own right, sparked outrage. Diana's candid interviews about feeling like the third wheel in her own marriage only deepened the public's disdain. The scandal overshadowed Charles's public duties and eroded trust in the monarchy, much like Edward VII's behavior had in his time. What makes these episodes particularly striking is how closely they mirror each other. The Duke of Kent, in his recent remarks, pointed to this recurring theme as evidence of a deeper pattern, suggesting that Camilla's actions, and, by extension, Charles's, might be linked to a history ingrained in her lineage. The parallels between Alice Keppel and Camilla are undeniable. Both women entered the royal orbit under controversial circumstances, and both maintained relationships with married kings. Eventually, both played roles in reshaping the public's perception of the monarchy. While the monarchy has often weathered these storms, the damage to its reputation has been significant. Edward VII's affairs were tolerated in an era when the press was more deferential, but Charles and Camilla faced the full glare of modern media scrutiny. Tabloid headlines painted Camilla as the villain in Diana's tragic story, a narrative that persists to this day. For many, Charles and Camilla's affair symbolized a betrayal not just of Diana but of the monarchy's commitment to the ideals of duty and service. Each new scandal, from Edward VII's affairs to Charles and Camilla's relationship, is a reminder of the monarchy's human flaws. Yet these very flaws also make the royals more relatable, creating a paradox where scandal both damages and sustains public interest in the institution. As public scrutiny intensifies, the consequences of these revelations may yet redefine the monarchy's role in British society. Public backlash, Camilla's role in Diana's tragedy. Camilla's role in Princess Diana's life and ultimately in her struggles remains one of the most contentious chapters in modern royal history. The Duke of Kent's recent revelations about Camilla's shameful ancestry have reignited public anger. Diana was heartbreakingly open about the impact of Camilla's presence in her marriage to Charles. During her famous 1995 interview with Martin Bashir, she uttered the now infamous words, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." Her candid admission exposed the full extent of Charles and Camilla's relationship and how it undermined her sense of stability and self-worth. For Diana, Camilla wasn't just another woman, she was the persistent shadow that loomed over every attempt to find happiness with Charles. Camilla's affair with Charles began long before his marriage to Diana, yet it continued throughout his time with the Princess of Wales. Despite public perceptions, Diana was aware of Camilla's significance early on. Reports suggest she confronted Camilla at one point and pleaded for the chance to have her marriage free of interference. These moments of vulnerability resonated deeply with the public, who saw Diana as a wronged woman caught in the crossfire of royal expectations and personal betrayal. The revelations by the Duke of Kent have brought these old wounds back to the surface. By tying Camilla's behavior to her great-grandmother Alice Keppel's relationship with Edward VII, the Duke has given critics new ammunition to question whether infidelity and opportunism are deeply ingrained in Camilla's family history. Many have called the Duke's comments a vindication of Diana's enduring legacy. They argue that Camilla's past and lineage reveal a pattern of behavior. The public's anger isn't just about Charles and Camilla's actions in the past, it's about the perception that Camilla's ascension to Queen Consort symbolizes a betrayal of Diana's memory. Camilla's current role as Queen Consort has done little to soften public perceptions. While some have accepted her position as evidence of Charles's enduring affection for her, others see it as a reward for decades of calculated maneuvering. The idea that she is the great-granddaughter of Alice Keppel, a woman who benefited immensely from her own royal affair, only deepens the narrative that Camilla's actions were part of a long-standing strategy to secure power and influence. Diana's struggles during her marriage to Charles are now being viewed through the lens of the Duke of Kent's revelations. If Camilla's behavior is indeed linked to a family legacy of scandal, as the Duke suggests, it raises uncomfortable questions about the royal family's decision to embrace her so publicly. Did the monarchy knowingly allow history to repeat itself by legitimizing Camilla's relationship with Charles despite its controversial origins? One thing is clear, Camilla's actions and ancestry are now inextricably linked in the public's mind. Whether the royal family can overcome this renewed wave of criticism remains to be seen. The role of heritage, hereditary confirmed. The Keppel family's rise to prominence is a textbook example of how the British aristocracy consolidated power and privilege through strategic marriages, alliances, and, in Alice Keppel's case, extramarital affairs. As Camilla's great-grandmother and mistress to King Edward VII, Alice set the tone for a family legacy where personal ambition and social advancement often took precedence over conventional morality. Her decades-long relationship with the king not only elevated her family's status but also secured their financial future. Alice's role in Edwardian society was both admired and resented. She was celebrated for her charm and wit, which allowed her to navigate the complexities of royal life and public scrutiny. However, traditionalists saw her as a symbol of the moral decay that could arise when personal gain was prioritized over societal expectations. Despite this, Alice's influence on Edward VII was undeniable. She managed his volatile moods, provided counsel on political matters, and became an indispensable part of his inner circle. This legacy of leveraging personal relationships for social and economic gain was not confined to Alice's era. The Keppels used the wealth and connections Alice secured to entrench themselves further in the upper echelons of society. Her descendants, including Camilla, grew up in a world where influence was currency and maintaining proximity to power often required bending or breaking societal rules. The Duke of Kent's recent remarks suggest that these values were passed down through generations. It created a family culture where infidelity and opportunism were not only accepted but expected. His comments point to a broader pattern within Britain's aristocracy, where such behaviors were often overlooked or rationalized as part of maintaining one's position in society. In this context, Camilla's relationship with Charles is seen not as an anomaly but as a continuation of a hereditary tradition. Camilla's upbringing reflects this dynamic. Raised in an aristocratic family, she was steeped in the traditions and expectations of Britain's upper class. Her connection to Charles began in the early 1970s when they first met and quickly developed a close bond. While their romance was interrupted by Charles's marriage to Diana, it never truly ended. This long-standing relationship mirrors Alice Keppel's enduring connection to Edward VII and reinforces the idea that infidelity and scandal are recurring themes in the Keppel lineage. The Keppel family's legacy also highlights the role of the monarchy in perpetuating these dynamics. By accepting and even legitimizing relationships like those between Alice Keppel and Edward VII or Camilla and Charles, the royal family has implicitly endorsed a culture where personal ambition often comes at the expense of moral accountability. This complicity raises. Camilla's story is not just about one woman's choices, it is a reflection of a system that has long prioritized tradition and power over individual accountability. Whether this legacy can be redefined or if it will continue to shape the monarchy's future remains an open question. At its core, the Duke's exposé is more than a personal critique of Camilla, it is an indictment of the broader aristocratic and royal systems. While the monarchy has weathered storms of infidelity and betrayal before, this latest revelation highlights the enduring impact of these patterns on the institution's credibility and relevance. Public reactions to the Duke's remarks underscore just how divisive Camilla remains in the royal narrative. For many, her actions during her relationship with Charles, especially their overlap with his marriage to Princess Diana, are irredeemable. The Duke's claim that her behavior mirrors her great-grandmother's has only deepened this perception. It has reframed Camilla not as a singular actor but as a product of an inherited legacy. This narrative has reignited debates over her suitability as queen consort and whether her controversial past will forever tarnish the monarchy's image. Royal scandals can be traced back to King Henry VIII's relationship with Anne Boleyn, which led to England's break from the Catholic Church and the establishment of the Church of England. Henry's obsession with Anne, while he was still married to Catherine of Aragon, set a precedent for royal drama that would resonate for centuries. Another striking example is Queen Victoria's son, King Edward VIII, who abdicated the throne in 1936 to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Their relationship was considered taboo at the time, shocked the British public, and reshaped the line of succession. More recently, Prince Andrew's controversial friendships and allegations of misconduct have cast a shadow over his public image and reinforced how royal affairs, romantic or otherwise, can disrupt the monarchy's carefully curated facade. As the fallout from the Duke's comments continues, one thing is clear: the legacy of scandal, both personal and institutional, will remain a defining challenge for the monarchy as it navigates the complexities of the 21st century. Do you think it's time for all the monarchy scandals, past and present, to be dragged kicking and screaming into the light? Share your thoughts with us in the comments, we'd love to hear them. For now, we're done. Catch you in the next video.